Early on the morning of January 29th, 2002, Stephen Wayne Anderson lay down on the gurney in the execution chamber at San Quentin State Prison. 48 hours earlier, then California Governor Gray Davis had denied his clemency request in a 34-page written decision. From when he became a professional burglar at the age of 17 in 1971, to when he shot an elderly woman without hesitation in 1980, and all the way to his execution in 2002, Anderson's criminal record spanned 2 states and included at least 3 murders. The policeman who arrested him wrote to the governor, "During my 25 years in law enforcement, I have come across a lot of cold-blooded individuals, but in my opinion, Stephen Wayne Anderson is without doubt the coldest I have ever dealt with." Anderson's confession in the interrogation room was even more chilling. "I was born and trained to be a killer. I always wanted to be a killer." July 8, 1953, Anderson was born in St. Louis, Missouri, the older of 2 children. On the surface, his family looked like a textbook dual-income household. Dad worked in the oil, Mom was a court clerk. But the reality was a household held together with fraying thread. Both of Anderson's parents carried their own psychological problems. His father wasn't just a drunk, he was a violent one, and Stephen and his younger brother bore the brunt of it physically. His mother went the other way entirely, emotional neglect. She actually told Anderson that she dreaded the days that you boys were born, and she told neighbors she preferred her dogs to her children. Although he never felt an ounce of parental love, Anderson, being the older son, still tried to hold the family together. As a little kid, he'd change his brother's diapers for his mother, take on chores hoping to lighten her load and maybe lift her mood. And when the abuse started, he'd throw himself between his parents and his brother to shield him. But when Anderson talked about his childhood, something strange happened. His father, he insisted, was a good, fair man. And the violence, that was just the trauma of losing friends in World War II. As for his mother, her mental unraveling wasn't her fault. She'd been framed for embezzlement, made the fall guy for a corrupt judge, and did time for it. Because of his mother's prison record and his own slight build, Anderson caught hell at school. The other kids called him son of a jailbird and Tweety Bird. In 1971, the family moved to Farmington, New Mexico. At the time, Anderson had just turned 17, but after taking the fall for a party his brother threw, his mother threw him out. No roof, just the street. So he did what he had to do to survive, became a professional burglar. He started breaking into churches and schools, stealing whatever he could carry. Not long after, he got picked up for burglarizing a Farmington school, and there were accusations that he'd been carrying a rifle and had squared off against 2 police officers. That November, at 18, he caught his first serious sentence, 1 to 5 years in Utah for aggravated burglary. By 1973, they'd tacked on 3 more aggravated burglary convictions. In 1975, they shipped him off to the Utah State Prison, but if anyone thought incarceration would straighten him out, they were dead wrong. During a movie screening in the prison hall, he pulled a knife and stabbed another inmate. In November 1979, Anderson walked away from a prison work furlough and vanished. For the next several months, he was a ghost. No home, no address, just riding freight trains from one place to the next. Then came May 26, 1980, the eve of Memorial Day. Dressed head to toe in black, gloved hands, Anderson slipped into a house in Bloomington, California. The place belonged to Elizabeth Lyman, an 81-year-old retired piano teacher. He'd been watching the neighborhood for days. That night, Anderson downed half a bottle of vodka, then cut Elizabeth's phone line with a knife. Just after 1 in the morning, he pried open the glass on a French door and let himself in. Moving through the pitch-black house, he checked room by room, trying to figure out if she was home. Later, Anderson would claim he'd been after a car, but after searching the place, he found she didn't have one. He pushed open the bedroom door, and Elizabeth woke to a shadow standing over her bed, and she started screaming, hoping someone in the neighborhood would hear. Anderson didn't hesitate. He raised a .45 caliber pistol and fired 1 shot into her face from less than 2 feet away. When he was sure she'd stopped breathing, he grabbed the blanket and covered her body, then bent down to pick up the shell casing. With an IQ of 136, Anderson very well knew that shell casing could carry his fingerprints and barrel markings, evidence that would bury him. Then he went to work searching the house for anything of value. The exact amount he took remains murky. Most news reports put it under $100. In a private letter, Anderson himself claimed 80. Court records estimated around 112. But either way, he killed an 81-year-old woman for pocket change. After murdering Elizabeth, Anderson stayed in her house for nearly 2 hours. He cooked himself a bowl of macaroni and eggs in her kitchen, then sat down in the living room and watched TV. However, Elizabeth's neighbor had heard the gunshot and called the police immediately. At 3:47 a.m., officers arrived and arrested him. The irony is almost too much to stomach. The black clothes, the gloves, the cut phone line, the shell casing, all that careful effort to leave no trace. And then he decides to hang around for 2 hours eating macaroni and watching TV until the officers literally knocked on the door. Over the next few days, Anderson was held at a substation in Fontana and interrogated twice. The first came 3 hours after his arrest, conducted by 2 officers from the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office. He admitted to killing Elizabeth and confessed he was a fugitive. While waiting for Utah officials to arrive, the officers kept pressing him about other crimes. That's when Anderson claimed responsibility for 8 additional murders: his cellmate Robert Blundell, his client Timothy Glashin, and 6 contract killings in Las Vegas. Anderson only gave detailed confessions for 2 of those killings, Robert and Timothy. On August 24, 1977, while locked up in Utah State Prison, Anderson got into an argument with Robert in the prison kitchen. Robert was known as a snitch, and on his way out, he threw a sexual threat at Anderson. That was it. Humiliated and furious, Anderson grabbed a kitchen knife and stabbed him in the back, killing him. The Timothy case came after Anderson escaped from Utah State Prison. By then, he became involved with drug traffickers and started working as a hitman. On February 22, 1980, in Salt Lake County, Utah, a motorcycle gang member named Ace Fairbanks invited Anderson along to discuss a marijuana deal. Timothy Gran was their buyer. During the exchange, Ace grew suspicious. He thought Timothy might be a police informant. So Ace and Anderson drove him out to Mill Creek Canyon. There, Ace handed Anderson $1,000 to kill Timothy. Then Anderson pulled out that same .45 caliber pistol and fired 4 shots into Timothy. They left the body right there, figuring nobody would stumble across it. However, the body was found the very next day, and Anderson ended up hiding out in the canyon for months. This case wasn't until June 2015 that the Unified Police Department of Greater Salt Lake announced they'd gathered enough evidence through ballistic forensics to confirm Anderson and Ace as the killers. By then, of course, Anderson had already been executed 13 years prior, and Ace had died of illness long before that. The statute of limitations had run out too. As for those other 6 contract killings, one of the officers involved in Anderson's arrest was openly skeptical. He said he believed Anderson was good for the first 2 murders. The man remembered too many specific details for it to be fabrication. But the other 6? The officer had reached out to investigators across multiple jurisdictions, and nobody could find a single case matching Anderson's descriptions. No files, no corroboration. In the second interrogation on May 28th, Anderson reaffirmed the Robert and Timothy murders. He also told investigators plain as day, "I was born and trained to be a killer. I always wanted to be a killer." But come trial time, Anderson's story splintered apart. He admitted to killing Elizabeth, flatly denied the Timothy murder, and claimed Robert's death was self-defense. His defense team threw out the entire Vegas contract killing narrative entirely. They even brought in a psychiatrist to argue that something was fundamentally wrong with Anderson's brain, that the booze had hijacked his judgment the night he shot Elizabeth. However, the California Department of Corrections psychiatrist wasn't having any of it. Anderson had no mental illness, no disorder, nothing. The prosecution seized on that one sentence, "I was a born killer." They hammered it through the trial, through every appeal. Anderson tried to walk it back, calling it nothing but jailhouse bravado. The prosecution's response was devastating. You don't brag about being a killer if you're genuinely remorseful. Those two things don't live in the same house. On May 6, 1981, the jury convicted Anderson of first-degree murder with special circumstances, and the death sentence came down on July 24th. During the penalty phase opening statement, the prosecutor made Anderson's violent prison history the beating heart of his argument for death. Standing before the jury, his tone carried something close to a warning. So remember that when you consider what he's done and what he's testified to, this particular individual is a sociopath. He cannot live with anybody. He cannot get along with anybody. He kills people everywhere. He stabs people everywhere. He has stabbed an individual in prison. There is no place that anybody is going to be safe from this individual. He looks out for old number one, and that's all he's concerned with, and forget about the rest of the world. For over 2 decades on death row, Anderson filed appeal after appeal, trying to overturn his conviction. Nothing stuck. But the man had time on his hands, endless, crawling time, and he used it. He taught himself Latin. He wrote poems, short stories, a play, even started a novel. His work started getting attention, won 2 awards, earned an honorable mention from PEN America's Prison Writing Award, and one of his poems became the foundation for an off-Broadway play called Lament from Death Row. His supporters called him the Poet Laureate of the Condemned. Because of his literary achievements and what looked like genuine remorse, writers, human rights activists, and a circle of supporters launched a clemency campaign. Remarkably, even Elizabeth's and Robert's families got behind it, and asking that his sentence be commuted to life without parole. But both the U.S. Supreme Court and then Governor Gray Davis shut it down. Davis, in a 34-page written decision, pointed out that Anderson had called himself a professional burglar and hitman, and his record proved he meant it. One policeman on the case, Dennis, wrote to Gray, "During my 25 years in law enforcement, I have come across a lot of cold-blooded individuals, but in my opinion, Stephen Wayne Anderson is without doubt the coldest I have ever dealt with. I think that if you had any item that Anderson wanted, he would kill you and take it without giving it a second thought. The death penalty is a fair and just punishment for him." Anderson chose lethal injection. The night before, his attorney advised him to stay awake, to exhaust himself so the end will come easier. He refused and said, wanted to feel it all as repentance. On January 29, 2002, around midnight, over 200 protesters gathered outside San Quentin, holding a candlelight vigil for him. 30 minutes later, at 12:30 a.m., Anderson was pronounced dead, left no final words. He was the 10th person executed in California since the state brought back the death penalty in 1978. After cremation, his ashes were sent to an unnamed friend in Farmington. His life looks like a tragedy on loop, childhood abuse spiraling into lifelong violence.